I think that we have overproduced data professionals. So for the data nerds that are listening to this podcast, that doesn't mean that you give up and move on to the next thing. Just find why it is that you're interested in this space, or in the role, or in the title. That's number one. And number two is not all data scientists wear capes, right?
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to Nerd Nourishment's data podcast for nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. And of course, we always include some fun bits because we're all nerds here and we love to have fun. We're highlighting all kinds of real life skills that are very valuable to data professionals. So today with us, we have Santona Tuli. How are you doing?
Hi, Monica. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Good to hear. Thank you for being on the show. We typically start off our episodes by understanding people's origin stories. So if you could please let us know about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Yep. I got bit by this radioactive spider. No, so I am from Bangladesh. It was born and brought up in Bangladesh, and then I came to the U.S. for undergrad. I'm starting way at way at the beginning, and I studied physics and math in undergrad in Texas, Trinity University, and then I went to get a PhD in physics, specifically in nuclear physics. And that meant that I worked with very large data sets of nuclear collisions. So we would accelerate and collide particles, specifically nuclei, atomic nuclei. And then that would, because of how much energy there was in this, coming in, that would produce a lot of other particles and just a lot of energy. And then we would watch as that system sort of slowly dissolved away. We would watch and record the signals from that collision. And the purpose of this was to understand, what happens when we have access to higher energies, like we did after the Big Bang, for example. So sort of it's our one of our ways to studying early universe and what happened and how things came to be the way they are. So yeah, really fun work. I would encourage folks to sort of check out CERN and other sort of nuclear / particle physics institutions and experiments. It's always a good time. And also, I got to learn a lot of data science skills. I mean, as a physicist, you sort of get trained in thinking critically about data and sort of interpreting data and what signals exist versus not going with your gut feeling and sort of really asking the data and making the data tell you what's up. So this was a really good practical experience of that, like practical instantiation of that. So massive data sets, but the signals are really small. We're often looking for like a particle that, only existed for like 10 to the negative 23rd of a second, and is this high mass that can't really live for a very long time. So how do I find that data? How do I find that signal in this massive data? How do I maximize the signal to noise ratio, cut out all the noise? And then when I do fit a model and extract this signal, how do I quantify the degree of confidence I have in it? And how do I then interpret what it means and tells us a story about early universe physics and the world we are in today. So yeah, from there, from there I went and worked as a machine learning engineer. So we were using machine learning for doing this sort of signal extraction in particle physics. And I wanted to sort of, go deeper into that. So I worked as an ML engineer in the natural language processing, NLP space, for a year. And we had this I was at the towards the end. I ended up owning like the service that served the ML that we had in production, and what it would do. This routing engine would basically, if you have a question about a product that you're using that we were integrated with, then it would do a prediction on how your question should be resolved. So maybe it's best resolved by talking to another individual who uses this product and knows a lot about it, or maybe this is a question that we get all the time, so I can serve you up an automated answer and call it a day. So this is an interesting sort of routing problem. And then since then, I've worked as a data scientist, doing various, everything that entails, which we can get into. But continue to keep working with ML, more sort of in a proof of concept usually format rather than in production, and ML in service of analytics, sort of understanding how the business is performing, and how do we predict how the business is going to perform in the next quarter, given what we're seeing. So yeah, and that's brought me now to Upsolver, where I head up data and product strategy. So yeah, I've talked a lot. I'm gonna let you ask your questions now.
I do have a question about the first story you shared where you were trying to find like that one special atom. Was it an atom?
It was a boson. It's called it's a meson. So I was studying the upsilon family,
Okay.
which is made up of a bottom quark and an anti-bottom quark. It's much smaller than an atom. Let's put it that way. It's
okay.
A proton is made up of 3 quarks, mesons, and upsilon. The upsilon meson is made up of two quarks. So we're thinking more on the scale of protons and neutrons.
Interesting. So then the way that you approach that problem, is it like an anomaly detection type of problem?
Almost, given how rare the signal is. So this particle doesn't live for very long, even, it's produced because of the very high energy that's available, but it's short-lived because of how heavy it is. Heavy is relative. Obviously, we're talking about a very, very small particle. But because it decays away, it decays into other particles, right? So what we can do is we can detect those child particles, let's say, like the decay product, and we can reconstruct this original upsilon particle. So that's where it's we have like millions, hundreds of millions actually, of sensors in a detector that's purpose is to detect when a particle passes through it, how heavy it is, how much energy it had, which way it was going, what charge does it have. So I can look at all of that signal that's captured, and then I try to find signals that can map onto a single particle going a certain direction. And then I use that with the other remaining particles and try to do a vertex matching algorithm to find the original parent particle. So it's like a multi-step, first of all, you reconstruct a particle from all the signal, and then you use that particle and other such particles to reconstruct the original particle that you're actually looking for.
Wow. That's none of this I really understand, but it sounds fascinating. I don't have this type of background, but just what I'm taking away from it is that the foundational knowledge and how you apply what you've learned to data and how to manipulate and react with data still applies.
100%. Yes. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do the job that I do today without that training and that exposure, certainly.
Wow. So now I want to know about like the progression of data sets that you're working with, right? So your physics background, and then now what are the data sets that you mainly work with now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So my at this current job and my previous job, I've been working with a data tool, and part of what happens when you work on the data team of a data tooling company is you want to make the best version of the tool that you can. So it's almost, again, like I'm not necessarily like writing and deploying ML models into production. What I'm doing instead is making sure that if I wanted to do that, then my tool, Upsolver, would fit into this stack and how it would fit in, and that it would be the right choice, right? So, and not every tool is a right fit for every use case. So my job is to work with data sets. So oftentimes these days it's like internal customer data sets or product usage data set. So we specialize in event data, event streams, and I specialize in event streams starting from the particle physics days. So user interactions in your product. Let's analyze that data, put it together. There's collating, there's you have to attribute different actions with different users, and do all of that to say something about, okay, my product, this feature that I added isn't really working out the way that it's supposed to be working and stuff. So it's a lot of that, those kinds of data sets. And at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure that if I am at some other company, let's say I have a much more frequently used product, like if I'm working at Netflix, right, and users are browsing and stuff, they're spending X amount of time on one movie that is being showed to them, and then moving on and stuff. How, like, if I want to still use Upsolver to be able to capture that data, then put it in a data lake or analyze it, let me make sure that my tool is adequately robust and reliable to be able to handle that workload. That's part of my job.
What types of data problems are your favorite to solve?
Oh, I love that question. I like to solve problems that are not solved. I mean, I think that's true for everyone. But when I, if something is like truly tried and true, and there's a solution, it's automatically less interesting. Which is not to say that you don't have to do that. You definitely do. So my favorite ones are where we're sort of coming in into like greenfield opportunity. Maybe the data stack hasn't been set in forth yet. Even the questions that you want to answer haven't been really figured out yet. Then I like to come in and I like to sort of think about it holistically around, like, not be limited by what data we have, but sort of think from the perspective of, okay, what questions would be interesting to answer? Let's formulate those, and then let's do a deep dive into what data we could collect, and then building those pipelines. So I love working with data end to end. That's the first thing. I've spent a decent amount of time sort of on data engineering and also in production engineering. So, like, really from start to finish, I love the whole stack, and I really love it when I'm able to come in and architect that whole stack, as opposed to like plugging into something that's already been put together. Yeah, and like new and interesting problems. A lot of the times when companies are starting to think of, so I work at startups. I've thus far worked at startups, and I really like working at startups. And when you're sort of starting out, starting thinking about what data means for you, and how do you incorporate data into your decision making and analytics, then it's just there are a set of, let's say I go with like about 60, let's say, questions that are, everyone tells you that these are the questions that you have to answer, or these are the things that you need to know, or this is like the standard, right? You need some sort of signal on when a customer is going to churn, or you need some sort of signal on when someone's usage is 2xing, or like growing in a way that like an upsell makes sense. You need to know how usable is your product, and so on and so forth. And it's interesting to build that from the ground up, again, like if it doesn't exist. But at some point, it also becomes a little bit boring because it's the same thing over and over again as you go from startup to startup. So I think for my next role, I might I don't know. I might want to join somewhere where we've moved beyond those 60 questions and into a new realm, and there's something new to figure out and answer.
Yeah, it's funny that you're solving all kinds of wild questions as a data professional, but like the foundational skills kind of remain the same throughout, right? So what would you say when you're building things from the ground up? What foundational skills have you transferred with you throughout your journey?
Curiosity is the biggest one, and I think it's a skill. It can be learned. It's not like you're curious or you're not curious. I think you can train yourself to be curious about everything, really. Like if you're problem solving, obviously you need to be curious about like what the problem is and what the different modes are in which it surfaces, and what possible solutions could exist. But you also need to be curious about like what what are other folks doing to address this problem, to solve this problem? Is it really totally unsolved, or what can I borrow from other people's solutions? Where can I do better? You never really start like super from scratch, right? So I think curiosity is partly around like just gathering information, and the more that you can sort of um, learn the space of the problem and the solution that you need to put together, the more you can constrain it and then have a better approach. So that's for me the first one. The second one is communication skills. So, and I think there are different ways in which this comes. So one is a really technical um, aspect of communication, is the clearest that you can make your PRD, your product requirements document, your ERD, engineering requirements document, the better solution that you're going to be able to pull together, right? Because words matter, preciseness matters, and being able to describe what you have in your head is important. So that's one aspect of it, and I think of that like on the sort of more technical spectrum of communication. And then there's like consensus building, stakeholder management, presentation, and all of those things, right? Like it's all in how you talk to people. A lot of the times you might have a great idea, but you're rubbing people the wrong way, and they're not going to buy into your idea, and then it doesn't go anywhere. Or if they're choosing between your idea and someone else's idea, and they have a closer affinity to that other person, and I mean sometimes it's out of your control, like again, like you're not changing your personality per se, but I think like a lot of working with people, and working with data means working with people, is communicating well. Actually, I'll say one more. Statistics, or I should maybe say skepticism, maybe scientific skepticism, and like having the statistical tooling in order to test out your skepticism, test out different hypotheses and theories. And that's something that no matter what my data job is, if it's data adjacent, then that's going to be important.
For a little bit of fun bits, I want to get your perspective as a hiring manager. So let's talk about the job market. And I know we talked a little bit previously about the job market and how people are utilizing ChatGPT. What have you been seeing here? Is it helpful? Is it not helpful?
It's a good question. I think the jury's still out on it. I mean, it's helpful, right? It's helpful in the sense that I think we're slowly, but I mean, maybe even not that slowly, but surely moving towards a world where large language models and large like multimodal vision and language models are playing a bigger and bigger part in our lives. And it's absolutely nothing wrong with leading into that and taking those resources that are available to you as your job searching or doing whatever else you want to be doing. So I think that in large part, we're moving towards a world where they're going to be more and more helpful. I think that obviously there are issues like hallucination and things like that you have to be working through. What I worry about with ChatGPT or sort of these generative language models today is the lack of creativity, or if everyone's using it, how do you stand out? So the best resume that I've ever read was like a My Little Pony, themed resume. It, yeah, yeah, is a software engineer, and like it is just like the resume was colored and themed, and that's how the story was told, and like that sort of thing. How do you that inspiration came from somewhere. Maybe this person's child was into My Little Ponies, and I think it was a man too. So it's really good. Really really happy to see that. But that comes from like a personal place, right? A personal relationship or understanding of the world, and that I don't know. I don't think that today we're at a place where if you're using ChatGPT to help you craft your story, you're going to get that, and certainly not in a way that it stands out from what other folks are getting.
Mm-hmm. And seeing a resume that was so unique, was it kind of a shock? Did it deter you from wanting to interview them, or did you appreciate it?
No, it was great. So this was actually not an interview or not a resume that was submitted to a role that I was hiring for. I just sort of came across it. But no, I mean, I would definitely, like, if something stands out. The most important thing, especially in a market like this, right, like today's market, I think it is very important to stand out in your resume. Catch the hiring manager's attention, catch the recruiter's attention somehow, because you're going to get 20 seconds max that folks are spending on your resume. And a lot of it is often reading the same, right? I mean, there's nothing that's not to like take away from anyone's experience, but if you have 200 people that have 2 years of experience as a data scientist somewhere, and you have to choose between them, it can't be that can't be your metric, is experience in data science. It has to be something else. So yeah, having your personality somehow shine through into a resume, or even like having a shock factor, I think would be positive for me.
I love that so much. So what would you say about interviews, and how do you stand out during an interview?
Of the people I've hired, at least one was just so much driven by this person's enthusiasm that like it's kind of like it's remarkable. So we ended up hiring this person, and they had the technical chops, and so did 5 other people that I interviewed for this role and could have extended an offer to, right? So it's not even a compare, like there's no reason to compare, okay, who was more technically apt or a better fit for, or so it's when you're trying to figure out what a good fit for a job is, there are so many different factors, and when you're interviewing folks, there's like you're looking for, how well am I going to be able to work with this person? How much do they know versus how much will I have to train them? And are they willing to learn? Are they, someone that's going to be easy to train, or are they going to push back and, or feel defensive and stuff? So this person was just really stood out in their enthusiasm, not for the job necessarily. Like, I'm not saying you need to be like a hardcore fan of the company or something like that. In fact, I don't think you should be that. But enthusiasm for the work, the data, the having the curiosity around the problem. And they followed up after one of the interviews with like some like follow-up exercise on, like, there was a take home and the presentation, and then we had this conversation and sort of explored other avenues to go down, and then they followed up with something, and that's like totally not needed. And I'm not saying that this made them necessarily more attractive, so I don't want to encourage folks to spend more of their time on an interview process. A lot of the times interview processes are way too long and just too much. So by no means am I saying you have to do more to go above and beyond. What just the reason I'm pointing this out about this person is it's another way in which they were able to show their like, oh yeah, this was actually super interesting. I had fun in this conversation, and then I had this thought at the back of my mind, so I followed up on it. So that was really cool. But yeah, even without that, just the way that they showed up to the interviews, and just had a smile and sort of like showed enthusiasm, that really kind of blew me away, and it was clear that that'd be the choice.
I like how you mentioned that you're gauging like how much they know, and it's okay that they don't know things, but at what level are they able to be taught?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when people are learning new things, what are your like recommended go-to resources for people that are trying to break in and learn?
I still think the biggest resource is people. So I really strongly believe in finding or trying to figure out what you want to do and how you want to be doing it, like not based on this sounds good, or this is something that everyone's doing, or everyone with my background is doing. Like there should be some lines of inspiration around like, this is where I want to be doing. And once you have that, like just find people who are there today, right? And learn from them, talk to them. And I've said this over and over again, like folks are happy to talk about their work and, and their journeys, and just have that coffee chat. And so like find those people that are today where you want to be, maybe in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and hear from them what their journey has been, how they got there, what they what they think may have slowed them down or sped up the process for them, et cetera, et cetera. And you also, what you learn in this process is not just how they came to the position that they're in, but also how someone in that position thinks. So a good example of this is actually it's product management. So I've always been interested in product and thinking about products. So there's this phrase like thinking like a product manager, and it applies to thinking like a data scientist as well. And I think any job, but like the part of the hurdle in doing product management is learning how to think as a product manager, because it is a specific kind of thinking. So you have these frameworks that you can use to to determine your whether a feature should be built or not, what's in scope, what's outside of scope, what's the roadmap like. But frameworks will only get you so far, right? It's also like, how do you put your mind in the correct sort of direction. I'm being a little bit vague here, but sort of in the correct path to having the outcomes and the solutions. So so thinking like a product manager is a thing. And when I sort of discovered it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And as I talked to more product managers, like it really like kind of shone through to me is they all have such clarity of of thinking. Right? I mean, most people like this is not unique to product managers necessarily, but what's unique or what's unifying is that when you talk to good product managers, they can somehow cut to the chase very quickly and very directly, and like talk very clearly about their products or what they're building. And that is something that I started recognizing. The more folks I spoke to, the more I started seeing this theme. I was like, okay, this is an important part of being a product manager, or at least something that everyone shares. So there must be something to it. So now I know something more about this field or this profession that isn't written isn't written down, isn't like, I'm not going to learn it from books. It's this thing that I've discovered because I did these informal chats and interviews with people. So the long long monologue to get to, for resources, I definitely think that finding the folks who are doing the things that you think you want to be doing. And sometimes when you have those conversations, what you actually realize is that you don't want to be doing it because it's not what you thought it was. And that is also a great signal and great piece of information to walk away with. Beyond that, wherever your curiosity takes you. So, I mean, obviously, as coming from a more academic background, like I love reading papers, like actual like journal papers that are kind of long. And even if I, nowadays I'm far enough away from physics or nuclear physics that probably the equations don't necessarily make sense, but you still get the gist of it, right? You understand what the reasoning is, and then you understand what's happening. So that is something that I think is worth keeping up. Is just like find the sources of information that you know and trust, or that you if you don't know what sources of information are to be trusted, there are information literacy professionals everywhere at your local library, at your college library, that will help you guide and help guide you and find those sources and determine when a source is like legit or is a good one to trust and stuff. And then keep consuming from those sources, reading that material, because the internet is flooded with resources. And it's not to say that, like, if you read blog posts on Medium, or even like company blog posts, it's not that there isn't things to learn there. There definitely is. What is usually true is that the signal to noise is much lower, and you might have to read 2 pages before you get one sentence that has the kernel that you're looking for. And it's understandable, because a company is, they're providing you the information, they're trying to educate you, but also they have these other things to say. They want to show their shiny things that they want to sell. So it's part of learning is figuring out how to identify and hone into those like little pieces. And it's easier when you start with more information rich resources, and then you can now that you know how to extract information well, you can broaden and figure out, like, this is true of like most people, I think, is when you read the first sentence in a blog post, you should have an idea of, okay, is this worth my time? And when am I going to find the thing that I'm looking for?
Those are all really great takeaways. Do you have any final recommendations or even words of encouragement for the listeners?
Job searching is always tricky, and right now it's very tricky. I think that we have overproduced data professionals. So for the data nerds that are listening to this podcast, if you are excited to do work in data, and you're sort of starting out and trying to break in, as they say, into this field, just be aware that, like, because it was the sexiest job of the 21st century or whatnot, there's a lot of people who wanted the title and sort of went into the training for data roles. And so there is an abundance of folks with data in their title, or a data-esque resume currently competing in the market. That shouldn't be like, that doesn't mean that, you give up and move on to the next thing. Just find why it is that you're interested in this space, or in the role, or in the title. That's number one. And number two is not all data scientists wear capes, right? Like, not all data professionals have a data title, or there's lots of different kinds of data work and data adjacent work. And to me, even though I have data in my title, or data scientist in my title, it's really about problem solving to me. And the truth is that I could be solving the same exact problems from a completely different background, and come to it in a completely different way, and it would not make the problems that I'm solving, or were solving 3 years ago, any less interesting. right? So it's all about finding what it is about this profession that excites you and seeing if that exists, in other shapes and forms as well. And then lastly, like finding the thing that sort of drives you. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to leave as your footprint on this world, right? So like some people are excited to go into healthcare, some people are excited to go into education, and some people just want to help build tools that maybe help other people do good things in the more distinguished areas. So yeah.
That's a wonderful takeaway. And thank you for saying that you don't need the word data in your title to be a data professional.
Yep.
If any of the audience members had questions for you, where can they find and or follow you?
LinkedIn. I'm pretty not super active, but I'm definitely scrolling a lot on LinkedIn. I love meeting new people, love hearing from new people. You can follow me, you can connect with me, send me a message. Happy to do coffee chats.
Well, thank you again so very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. I know I spoke a lot, but it was really fun.
A guest, you should. All right. Well, thank you again. And as always, folks, happy learning.